All right, welcome back to another episode of In the Doghouse, hosted by Justin Cotler and myself, Kiefer Lammi. And today, we are fortunate enough to have Dakota for his first and last podcast ever after the way things went to start. And Colette, both of which are coaches for us with Underdogs as well as athletes. But we really wanted to get on today just to kind of talk through the competition that we were all at this past weekend at the Legends Masters Championship hosted at Mayhem. Colette competed. Dakota was down there with us coaching. We had 5 athletes down there, which was a really cool representation. And for me personally, it was my first Masters only competition that I've been at. So much different than like a Wadapalooza or something else where Masters are there, but all of the eyes are really on the elite group. This was the best opportunity I've had to like just watch and just focus on what's going on in the Masters competition. So that was a lot of fun for me. But Dakota, for you, you've been working with the Masters group for a while. I know, Debbie Corwin in particular is one of your athletes. She's been to the games a couple times. Tell me a little bit about your experience working with the Masters and kind of how the weekend as a whole was for you.
Yeah, Debbie's been one of the clients that I've had going on 3 years personal, but I've been working with her at our gym for about 6 or 7 years now. And that Legends Comp, that was actually my third one. So 2 years ago, they still were able to put it on during COVID in Arizona. It bounced to San Diego last year, and then this last one at Mayhem. So 3 different venues. So a lot of different comparisons between the 3. And then the other athlete I had sorry.
I was just going to say, how big was this one compared to the other ones? Have they changed the sizes or the size of the age groups?
The size of the age groups have stayed about the same. They actually went down a little bit in some of the older groups. So if you're looking at the 35 to 39, they took 40. And some of the other groups, they only took a maximum of 20. And then you have like the 65 and older where they take as many as do the qualifiers, but they only get about 10 or so at that level.
Gotcha. Very cool. And so you had Debbie there that you were working with one-on-one. You also had Shannon there that you were working with one-on-one. Shannon was in the 45 to 49 division?
Correct. Yeah, she's someone that I picked up this last year. She was working with a different remote coach and got a chance to get her going in-house here at Underdogs.
Love it.
She's awesome.
Then, Colette, for you, This is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is only your second Masters-only competition, right? You just kind of just went over the border into the baby Masters, but still dabbling in some of the elite divisions, competed at semifinals this past year and whatnot.
Yeah. So last year, Wadapalooza was the first one, and then this was my second one. And it was, in my opinion, like we spoke about, it was way more competitive than Wadapalooza last year. And that was super beneficial just from a competitive standpoint, because I got to go against a lot better athlete. I got to learn, a lot about myself, but then also see like what is actually out there for my age group, especially going into this upcoming season. And I don't, obviously I don't know who's going to compete and try to make a run for the games, but it gave me an idea of kind of like what the point is that, and who's pushing that limit for our age group.
For sure. Yeah, Justin, I know you weren't there, but if you were to watch it and you were to go out and watch the 35 to 39 division, and this is to take nothing away from the other divisions, but if you specifically watch that one, you'd be hard pressed to find much of a difference between that and what happens in like an elite open division that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at the top 5 and you had several semifinal athletes from last year. I think Amy Morton might even finish top 10 at Atlas Games. Which is obviously pretty impressive. And she obviously did extremely well this past weekend. I'd be curious, I wasn't there obviously, so I'd be curious from your perspectives, the 3 of you to kind of get an overview of how you felt about the competition, the programming, how it ran, et cetera. Obviously, Mayhem the Machine was putting it on, so it's just very curious from your perspective, positives, negatives, kind of a no holds barred overview of what you felt.
I think one of the first things
Go ahead,
you look
Colette.
at.
Oh, sorry, Dakota. We're gonna go ladies first, bro.
Yeah, of course.
Chivalry's not dead. Okay?
Honestly, it was smoothly run. Like if I'm just going from like being an athlete and not like thinking as a coach, but as an athlete, like not having to stress about do they have this in the warm-up area? They had everything pretty much minus like the short bar or the shorter bar that weighed less in the area, but it didn't really matter. So from that aspect and from the scheduling aspect, like things were on time, things ran smooth. So yeah, like from that aspect, that was really cool because it was, like usually like Wadapalooza will run a little bit later, or other competitions I've done, it's kind of like last minute changes, but they were pretty much on point with that. So that was like my biggest positive, I think, from the overall logistics and running of things. And the communication was really like spot on with emails, messages, all that good stuff. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I definitely
Dakota?
agree with that. Very smooth. They have a good crew. They get a lot of volunteers. I think a 4-day comp is something they probably could have squeezed into 3. But what I did really like was how they did the day-to-day schedule. So they had basically certain age groups go in the AM session. So Debbie, for example, had like a 8:30 and a 10:30 session, or 8:30, 10:30 event. Not too long in between where she was necessarily cooling down, but then she was done for the day. And then like Colette would come in, or the 35 group, and they'd have a 2 o'clock and a 4 o'clock, or somewhere in that range. So it's definitely nice for the athletes not to have an 8:30 and then a 5 p.m. where they have to worry about either hanging out for 6 hours or doing travel back and forth. I think that was definitely something that was different than some of the competitions I've seen, and I really like that.
I agree. I thought that was really nice. Obviously, from a coaching perspective for us, we had people in both groups, so we were there for the whole day anyway. But I could imagine for an athlete, like knowing you're there in the morning and you're knocking out a couple workouts with, 60 to 90 minutes in between, I think is a little bit more efficient and keeps the day from dragging on too much, as opposed to like you have an 8 a.m. event and then a 1 o'clock and then a 4 o'clock and you're like, shit, I've been fitnessing for 12 hours today. And that's really hard for anybody to do, but especially an age group where, you're training really hard, but training's probably not your full-time gig anymore. So you're not used to spending all day in the gym like that, and you want to kind of like get after it and get done with it.
From a programming perspective, what were you guys, some highlights, some of your favorite workout or two of the weekend, and then, and then maybe I don't want to say the worst program workouts, but just stuff that you would say, hey, maybe this is something to take a look at, or, maybe it wasn't appropriate for a specific age division, because I think it is really hard to program for masters athletes. And I think specifically once you get, 45 to 49, 50 to 54, 55, like does that break happen, right? Where do we start changing weights? Where do we start changing skills? And I think that's very challenging. And so obviously I'd be curious from, obviously Colette, you competed, but, you're also a coach. So I'd be curious from, the athlete's perspective and also the coach's perspective, kind of, where that balance was, how they did as far as, balancing, okay, these loads were great, or this was, this didn't go as well as it should have. Some of the choices that were made. So I'd be curious to know, and I'm sure people are interested in hearing your perspectives.
Just right off the bat, like for myself, like I appreciated the fact that it was a lot of things that I've not got to do in competition. Like it was a lot of shorter, like balls out, go. And there was no, like, honestly, with most of the workouts, there was nowhere to hide. Like if you didn't like get going and go, or if you mess up on a transition, that was 2 reps. Like so from that aspect, like I really appreciate it because it made me think, if I had to do this again, how would I do it? What could I have done better? I think for me personally, I'd like to do that 7-minute all over again, but maybe not. The 7-minute workout that they had was awesome, but it was a little bit terrible for me. But as far as like the programming aspect, like there was no like heavy lift to kind of have a break. So every workout like was really full throttle. I think what I would have liked to see more of, or just like maybe one more of, was like a little bit of a longer or mid-range Metcon. Because I felt like, especially on day 3, it was like short, punch to the face, 3-minute workout. Then it was like the longer 12, I mean, you can't even say like 12 minutes is long, but it felt long because it was a lot of volume in a short amount of time. The 12-minute GHD rope climb wall ball one. And then it was again another like short 6-minute AMRAP where it felt like a punch to the face. So I think that somewhere in the mix of the programming, I would have liked to see like just a little bit longer time domain in there for another option. Yeah, but I mean, I didn't watch, I have to say, like, minus watching Shannon and Debbie, so watching those upper age groups right before I went, you know, looking at the GHD one, especially because that's always a weird one as far as like programming for masters athletes, like what's the cutoff, where is too much, where's not enough. You know, I didn't really see any athletes struggle per se, but again, Dakota could probably say more because he watched the earlier age groups. You know, so that was kind of one of those workouts I think I was worried about for the older age groups, and watching it, I was like, man, they're kind of kicking ass right now. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I thought when I was looking at the programming was more from the athlete perspective. Short, you know, pretty intense workouts that definitely were pretty exciting to think about. I think once we got a chance to see like the weekend unfold and just how fast some of the workouts went in terms of like the interval one with the dumbbell, almost everybody finished, if not in the first interval, very close to the beginning of the second interval. And I think they could have made that a little bit more challenging. And that was one of those ones where, Justin, you asked about like the changing of the weights. You know, the 35 age group had a 50-pound dumbbell for the women and a 70-pound dumbbell for hanging snatches versus Debbie, she had a 20-pound dumbbell. And we regularly train with the 35, but when you watch most of those ladies, it was so fast, so aggressive, that weight really just didn't challenge them. And that's just a tough one. You know, you can't really account for all those. Last year, there was ring muscle-ups, bar muscle-ups, rope climbs, handstand walks, a heavy deadlift, and 2 max lifts. So I think as an athlete, that sounds way more enticing than what you got to see this year, which some groups didn't hit anything over 85 pounds in some of the workouts. And so, you know, when you break it down, some of those things, I think, could have used a little bit more testing, kind of just to wrap it up. I think that the rope climb one as a spectator was really the only one that wasn't exciting to watch. All of the others as a spectator was great. You know, they, like I said, fast. The setups were good. You could see the progression or who was in first and second. But those rope climb ones, you watched 7 minutes of straight rope climbing for some of those age groups. And It was just a little tough to watch.
Yeah. You mean you didn't like to watch everybody like die at that point?
Colette's almost turned into legless halfway through.
I was like, get me up and down as fast as possible. I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's easy to look at it after the fact when you weren't involved in programming and say like, oh, I wish there was this, I wish there was that. I know that there's a lot that goes into it. I know that there are time constraints, and so that plays into the length of some of the workouts and all these things. But, you know, I think they had 9 scored events and 5 or 6 of them were 6 minutes or less. And so it definitely was skewed towards that direction, right? And, you know, Colette touched on the intro workout, which was a really cool test. I thought actually it was 7 minutes on a rower, a biker, and a ski with a 1 minute transition in between. So like a really cool, long, mixed monostructural event. But then you would think maybe there's like a more balanced strength event after that fact, something that's got a really heavy load in it. And I think we got some of that in the couplets, but, you know, there were 4 or 5 couplets over the weekend where we had, you know, running with dumbbell hang snatch. We had power cleans with burpees. We had deadlifts with wall walks. You had sandbag clean with handstand push-up. And that's a lot of like redundant hinge press, hinge overhead type of stuff where they were all really cool workouts. They were all challenging workouts, but it maybe didn't give the amount of variety that we'd want to see or give people an opportunity to showcase their skills. And I think if there's anything I learned over the weekend, it's that especially as you go up in the age groups, like everybody's really fit, but everybody's like proficiency in different areas is so varied, right? Like you have some masters athletes that are super aerobically fit, but they really struggle in their gymnastics. Or you have ones that are super strong or they're super gymnasty, but they're not very aerobic, or they have a shoulder injury, or they have these things. And so having so much redundance in the patterns and the movements that you're doing really keys in on like a certain type of masters athlete that's good, and maybe some others that didn't get a chance to showcase things. But, you know, some of my favorite workouts of the weekend were, you know, the thruster dumbbell step up sled push one and the toe to bar shoulder to overhead workout, and things that had like a little bit more mixed work going on, more opportunity to see changes throughout the weekend. Whereas, you know, the sprint events are awesome and they're exciting, but you kind of saw and expected the exact same thing as an outcome from each of them.
That's a really good point. I think like it wasn't until, because the toes to bar workout was end of day 2, right? so that was when we finally saw like, okay, like this happened with, at least in our age group, like who can do who has high volume toes to bar, who can hang on for that. And there was a massive drop off at that point. So I think having like one more event like that in a different kind of way would have been solid. But yeah, that's a really good point, Kiefer.
Yeah. And I the final event on the last day, for people that didn't actually see it, it was a 2-part event. So it was 2 scores. Both couplets. First one was bar muscle ups and front squats at a reasonably heavy weight. And you had a 1-minute transition, and then you had sandbag cleats and circuit handstand push-ups. And they were exciting. I love the combo of the 2 of them, like very traditional. They complemented each other, but the time caps were super tight as well, right? Which I think is elegant and cool on the programming side, because it like gives you no options for game planning. It's like, you're going to send it and you're either going to blow up or you're going to get through this thing. Right. But I just think that they missed the mark a little bit on how tight the time caps were, because you didn't give people an opportunity to finish. I think on the back half, the sandbag clean and the handstand push-up piece, nobody finished more than 3 of the 12 sandbag cleans in the final set. So it wasn't really like giving an opportunity to even showcase the skills that we got to have on that final event. And like, it's got to be so freaking hard to program an entire Masters event, because you think about it, like you're programming for 35 to 39, which are people that may have just aged out of the elite open division. You're also programming for 65 to 69, right? And you're trying to find a scale for that. But not only that, like, how many freaking gyms have somebody in each age group to even test these workouts? You have to be able to make assumptions, right? Because the chances are that there aren't many more athletes at that caliber in that age group than there are competing in the competition. So who's left over to test them? So like, I totally get that you have to make some assumptions. I totally get that their thought process may be totally different than ours after the fact. And obviously we're always biased towards our athletes a little bit, but I definitely think there was opportunity there to showcase some more.
And that's something
just kind of off topic. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dakota.
Just to circle from our recent experience, helping out with the Zealous games, there's some major drop-offs when you talk about movement patterns too. Like, it's great to be able to showcase if you can do handstand walks, but at some, capacity, some of those shoulders, some of those pistols, some of those just movement patterns definitely drop off. And it's a bummer when, you might be the 64-year-old athlete who can do handstand walks, but if you're the only one that is able to do it and everyone is just spending 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes kicking up and kicking down, it's tough. Yeah,
for sure.
I wanted to ask Colette. Colette, did your kids go with you?
It was a girls
to the
only trip. It was I just brought my daughter. I was making up for lost time, so we drove up. She was there. She was full Wonder Woman costume for like 2 out of the 4 days, and she loved it. Like, the highlight, awesome. And I don't like Kiefer. I think you guys left before, but the top 5 girls took a picture together, and Maverick was in it with us. So it was really cool. Yeah, she was happy, awesome. And like, pretty much like I told my husband, I was like, the highlight of this trip for me was like multiple times during the weekend she would do something and she's like, Mom, I'm strong like you. And like, I don't like push that on her. It's like something that she sees, and it's so cool that she got to see like lots of different women and even older people, like whatever. But I know she was actually paying attention when I was kind of working out sometimes, so like, I'll take it. Yeah, it was cool.
Kiefer was cool. Getting a lot of extra compliments.
He's using my daughter.
People kept coming up at least 2 or 3 times. Yeah. They'd be like, "Oh, I have a picture of you and your daughter. It's so cute. She's so adorable."
He's like,
He's like, no, not mine.
I'm surprised Kiefer didn't run for the door.
Tried to. I was trying to, but I couldn't leave the kid there. I'm literally like stuttering my way through it. They'll come up to me. They're like, "Is it your kid?" Or and I'm like, no.
I'm a dog dad.
No, not at all. That's awesome. Yeah, dog dad. That's super cool. I say for people listening that don't know, Colette's super mom with 3 kids, and she's a badass. So
the really cool part
definitely,
was like I said, like I usually don't go to competitions to make friends, and like it was all about trying to win. But like meeting some of the other women, like all top 5, like the girl next to me has 4 kids. I was like, I just got out mommed. Like and then everyone else at least had 1 or 2, and I was like, this is awesome. And they were super cool. And like honestly, I think from that standpoint, where like maybe missing out where it's not like a masters only comp and you're just kind of like in the flow of things. Like all these people have lives, all these people work full time, have kids. So it's super admirable from that aspect of things. And yeah, really good like example for their kids and stuff. So it was awesome.
And so this is what I was going to kind of ask you about, is because I think that maybe women that didn't compete at the open level before becoming a masters, right, might think like, oh, I can't compete, or oh, I can't get involved with that because I have kids, or I have a family, or I have a job, or I don't have time for that. But from my perspective, like everybody in those age groups is a mother, or they work full time, or they own a gym, or they do these things, and they're making time for the competing on the side. And so I think like kind of the space has given us this picture of what it takes to be an elite athlete, that is like, you have to train 8 hours a day, you have to do these things. But I know for a fact that you don't. I have a pretty good feeling that a lot of the women there and men there aren't doing that. It's like, what is the biggest difference you see having competed, at a semifinal and now competing at the masters level, just in terms of like the persona or the lifestyle of the athletes? Like how attainable is it for other people?
Way more attainable, just because like, I think it's, again, you look at your life as buckets that you fill up. It's like, what are your buckets that you're choosing to fill up? And I think that from that aspect, for somebody that's just starting out, like, it's little drops into that bucket. And some days it's 90 minutes, other days it's 0 minutes. And it's like, what is the most impactful thing I can do every day to move that dial forward and to try to attack that goal? It's no different than for the same person that is trying to train, like how they ran their business or how they started their business. It's the same habits and the same lifestyle choices. I think it's just, I had a conversation with one of the moms that I was competing against, and it's just like, your boundaries, your time, your space, it literally becomes family, work, training, and then little to nothing else outside of that. And you don't actually miss that stuff. So I think that's the really cool part of it. It's super attainable, seeing like multiple people with their kids, families, everybody there. Like, I think that was the cool part of it. Like it was more family orientated instead of like, I hate to say this, but you have to really like love watching masters athletes competing in that, like to have that connection. It's not just like the flash and the mystique of, oh my God, that famous person. Like it's actually the bones of what it is that is going on within CrossFit. So I think that was a really cool part that I much preferred over something else that and I don't even know, I don't do many competitions, so I can't say something else besides that, but yeah.
Very cool. Dakota, I have a question for you. I think, you spend a lot of time working with some of the older age divisions, which I think are a little further removed from what we work with in-house at Underdogs and stuff. As you watch them compete and as you're kind of looking at like how to address training with Debbie, what is the biggest difference maker? What's like the biggest difference in the way that they train, the way you need to program for them?
I think one of the biggest things that, especially leading up to it, was, a valuable recovery day can be almost as good or better than a valuable training day. But in terms of the regular programming, we just have to worry and go through like monitoring some of the ballistic movements that are happening. We do way more strict pull-ups, way more strict push-ups and dips than, for the most part, kipping, butterflies. You don't really see a lot of that in there. Some of these women are crushing strict handstand push-ups still in the 60 to 64 age range. And so those are the things that we're trying to attain. Just keeping the body healthy, honestly. We work on a little bit more of the aerobic pieces than jacking the heart rate up in a 3-minute 21:15:9. You see a lot of the 55 and up is where they start to break that down anyway. It goes from a 15:12:9. So we're still staying in that time zone, the 3 to 5 minutes or that desired, effect, but mainly just focusing on how to modify or scale, I guess, if you will, so that the time zone stays the same.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think that just kind of feeds into like basic exercise physiology, right? Of like over time, we lose rate of force development very quickly. We lose strength at a certain rate, but your aerobic capacity maintains really, really well over time. So
yeah.
You can assume that at those age groups, right, like they're not moving as quickly, they're not quite as powerful, but we can still be really, really fit. But I think that was the biggest separator I noticed, having not spent a lot of time watching the older age groups, is that the couple men or women on something like a dumbbell thruster that could reverse their dumbbells faster were like miles ahead of the rest of the group. And it's very noticeable, right? Because you have some people that are moving a little bit more gingerly through their squat. But if you can actually like drive with some force and you can pull the dumbbells back down, it's like a huge wow factor. And it made me think like how much we take that for granted with the younger groups, because we get a lot of former athletes, a lot of people that are still in their 20s. They're kind of in their like athletic prime. But for that older age group, it's like, dang, this is definitely something to be trained. And even if we're not going to get super springy, knowing that you have that in you to like move quickly when your thought process is like slow and steady wins this race is really helpful.
Yeah, and when we focus on that,
old shoulders, man, it's not a lot of fun. Trust me.
Yeah, we've focused on trying to move fast, and the biggest thing there is just minimizing the time trying to move fast. Just a couple of reps at a time. As high quality as you can, as quick as you can. Otherwise, it's just not going to hold up. And yeah, you have Patty McGill. She won that group. She was a podium games athlete, and that was the one I think that you're probably referring to, especially in that older age group.
Definitely,
she just moves a little springier, a little bit faster. And whether she has like a more extended athletic background or her joints are just holding up a little bit better, she definitely has an advantage there. Yeah,
for sure.
What was it like? What were the spectators like? Was it like Colette said, mostly family oriented? Was it a good turnout? Did they have decent spectator?
Yeah, it was rowdy.
I think the coolest part, and this again, I'll geek out because this is my first real masters competition. But when you watch the older ladies, the ones that just competed and got off the floor would literally go to the end and watch their friends in the next heat that they're competing against. I think it was that 55 and up. I couldn't tell how what the age group was, but it was they were all cheering their names. Cause I went up one time to cheer for Debbie and everyone looked at me who are you? I was I think I'm out of place, but I was fine. But yeah, super supportive from that aspect. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, the camaraderie.
I would assume
the
camaraderie, right? Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I would assume the camaraderie. I mean, it's the appreciation of seeing others, especially as you start to get into that 50+ age groups, man. It's fucking hard. It's hard to compete, at a high level and do all that stuff. And I mean, I'm blown away, by what the masters do on a day in and day out basis, training wise, but especially in competition, it's just amazing to me how they hold up. Cause I remember how I felt my last regionals that I competed at was 2012. I was 37 at the time. And when I was done with it, I was I feel like I've been hit by a Mack truck. For a week, I was I can't, you know what I mean? And we're talking about CrossFit in 2012. That's not CrossFit now. The loads were very different, and I just remember how I felt, and I can't imagine, 57 doing that in a 4-day competition with some of the workouts that I saw. Is just, it's amazing. So
I'll give Dakota credit.
They are hurting a little bit. They just put on a good front, but that camaraderie goes way past just on the competition floor. From personal experience, Debbie is in 2 or 3 of these group chats, and I mean it's all 15, 20 games athletes, and they rotate through these competitions, and when one of them goes down, they feel for each other. They want everyone to be healthy, and they want everyone to be there and be successful, and it's really unique and very different than what I'm used to for the regular elite group. Yeah,
right.
I'll tell you, the bathroom smelled like straight icy hot all weekend. I'm sure sales skyrocketed.
Yeah, Tiger Bomb, Bengay,
I was about to ask for some
all the different stuff. Oh yeah. Okay, I get it. That's awesome.
It's
very
funny.
cool.
I'll give Dakota credit throughout the whole weekend. Dakota knows everybody in Debbie's age group, and I think that just shows how close knit the group is, or maybe how small it is, but they all go to the same competitions. He knows them all by first name. He probably knows their families. He knows who coaches them. But you get a full scouting report on them at the same time too. He's oh, I know such and such is going to do great on this event. So it's different.
First trip to Mayhem? Not for you, Dakota.
That was my first trip to Mayhem. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've never been, so I'm curious what you guys thought of the gym.
We spent a lot of time in that coffee shop. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. It's cool.
The facility is amazing, honestly. There's nothing else you can say about it. huge space. They just built that new athlete barn, so they were able to have a main floor in their main gym, a secondary floor out there, so they could run multiple things at the same time. Plenty of warm-up area was like pretty solid space. A couple pieces of equipment that you didn't have there, but that happens at every competition. And the coffee shop is like a really nice kicker. So makes up for the fact that the town of Cookville is not exactly my cup of tea, and it was hard to find things around, but the coffee shop was great. It was bumping all weekend in there.
Yeah.
I would think at nighttime you guys would get out of there. Were there any restaurants still open in
Colette's
Cookville?
cooking at the house.
Not so much, huh?
It is after bedtime.
Did you hit the gas station for a bean burrito or something?
No, Kiefer was, hey, you tell him, Kiefer, you were fed well.
I was well fed through the whole weekend. I was the lucky guy. Night one,
Yeah.
Dakota made
fancy.
steaks for me, even poured me a glass of wine.
Wow.
Night two, Colette picked up Chick-fil-A. That was a treat. Night three, she made chicken for me. Honestly, I need to do more Masters coaching trips.
Oh, they don't do that.
Lord
for
knows
you,
our
yeah.
elite athletes are not making shit for me throughout the weekend. I just think, Colette, you can probably speak to this more than anybody, but like, there's a very different level of appreciation, and not to take anything away from our athletes, right?
Justin's
but like
laughing.
the Masters athletes,
I'm laughing. Oh, yeah. I've been doing this a very long time.
God, the level of appreciation from that group just gives me like so much joy and gratification, because like I know we have an impact on our elite athletes, but I freaking know that it's impactful and special to the Masters crew for a coach or a supporter or a family member or somebody to be there, because when you have a family and a life and all these other things going on, like it's special to be able to take 4 days away to go do this stuff. And so that was really cool. It made it feel like something that I want to do more and more.
That's like, I mean, now,
That's awesome.
Dramatic or not, but I told my husband, I was like, I really don't want anything for Christmas. I was like, this was a great trip. I was like, I had like memorable, like so much memories with my daughter. And then I was like, I just know how much time away and like what that meant. Like parents watching one kid, my brothers watching the other kid, and everyone kind of shuffling back and forth so I could do this for 4 days. So it's like, you feel selfish, but like that's the world of CrossFit when you're training and you're doing this. So it's kind of like one of those like double-edged swords where now I'm like, all right, all family, all everything for the like this week, back on it. But yeah.
So how did you feel about your performance, Colette? Were you happy with how you did? And obviously, I mean, we can analyze and take from it and, get ready for the season, but just curious, from your perspective, how you felt about how you performed.
Kiefer has notes.
I have notes.
I have mental notes for
Good.
my drive. 11 hours driving back gives you a lot of time to think. But yeah, no, for me, it's like if I go into a weekend and I say I want to finish this place or if I want to get this time, it really doesn't help me. My goals going into this weekend was to learn where my gaps are so that I can assess and keep the bigger picture in mind, which for me is making CrossFit Games in my age group. And I feel like I just did that, like looking at what am I emphasizing? What am I training? Again, the programming, we can talk about the programming one way or the other. I had one heavy lift, one less short sprint. I might have had more points, but like there was undeniable the top girls were the top girls and what made them special and what they brought to the table was really cool. But for me, like if I had two better workouts on like some of them, and just cleaning up certain aspects of things, like honestly, like even in that dumbbell thruster step up one, like a little bit faster transition and one no rep, that's 5-6 seconds there. That was 4 spots, like literally in my age group. So like for me, that was one of those things that I'm like, I'm really thankful to now think like, okay, when I train, if I'm going to have one workout a week, I should practice transitioning when I'm doing that workout. Cause I never do that because I like, don't think that way in my training. It's just like, get it done and attack it. Not like, how can I make this help me get ready for my next competition or for something that way. Again, because most of the age group stuff's also virtual, you don't have to transition things. So it's kind of like, how much time do you put on that versus not? But yeah, I mean, I was super proud of like, and I texted you the GHD rope climb one because I was like, man, my GHDs were fine. Like I felt fine. Rope climbs looked shitty. I was getting tired, but I did them. Right. And I was right up there with the top girls. So, from that aspect of things, like, coulda, shoulda, woulda on certain aspects of things, but I have no regrets in any of the workouts, no regrets, just stuff to clean up. Kiefer can tell you whatever else he wants to tell you tomorrow, but don't take that from me right now.
I won't. I'll save that for myself.
And Dakota, how did Debbie and Shannon feel about their weekend?
Yeah, so Debbie was crushing it the entire time, and she still ended up on the podium. But right at the end, there was one of the gals who just took her by a couple of points, and it was one of those handstand push-ups workouts where they were just cranking them out a little bit better. She's got a long-term shoulder issue that we've been trying to really work through, so if there's like one gap that we're trying to really fix with her, it's handstand push-ups. I think that is something that is going to set her out from being one of the absolute best. And, we've been calling her Debbie Horvath the last couple weeks.
That's really
and then, it was perfect though. And then Shannon, she's got such crazy strengths. I mean, she's one of the best gymnasts, not just in her age group, but like the entire weekend. She could compare against the 35 to 39s. She won the wall walk workout. She won the muscle up workout. If there was any other ones, she would have won those too. When you go into that age group, it's seconds, like you said, a couple of no reps, just a couple of quicker transitions, and makes a big difference. I think one of the things she fell kind of victim to was she was right on the cusp of Group 1 and Group 2, so she was getting like first or second place in her heat, but then the next group just all had a little bit of more of a kick, and so that just goes to show you like you can really benefit from being in that that later group. Because everyone's just pushing a little bit more. If you feel like you got that lead, it's a little bit easy to just kick back one notch. But I mean, she's very happy with how she did. She's been working out pain-free. She was able to highlight a bunch of her strengths. A couple of the things, like that last one, sandbags are going to be in her near future heavily.
Well, luckily for us, here we go with a plug. Bishop Barbell has sent us a bunch of sandbags, so we have plenty that she can play around with, and we love Bishop Barbell. Thank you, Curtis.
It's so funny. We get to the end of the week. I was talking to Colette leading up, and you could tell she was getting like both excited and anxious to compete because the frequency of texts I was getting about like, hey, what do you think about this piece? Should I do this? Should I be working on this? Was like amplifying significantly. And we got to like 2 weeks before, and we had a sandbag workout, and she asked me, she's like, hey, could you send me a video on going touch and go with the sandbags? And just my brain immediately went to like, I don't think you need to play that. Like, there's very few scenarios where touch and go is going to make more sense than quick singles, especially with your age group. Like, just the way we've seen them a lot lately. And I had to fucking eat my words so badly. You get to the last workout. It's the back half, and it's 6, 9, 12, sandbag cleans, strict handstand push-ups. But sorry, I'm swearing again. The kicker was that it was a 3-minute time cap. So it's like, nobody's freaking finishing the workout. No. And so it's how fast can you get to round 2? And so you saw like 3 or 4 of the athletes in the back they're all like learning touch and go for the first time. It was a good experience, but it just goes to show you it's like you can never be too prepared.
And that messed me up. I was ready here, but I wasn't like this. And I was like, man, this is a whole choreographed like piece. And I wish that one was 4 minutes because I was like, I feel like I was like one of the 3 athletes that I was like, my strict handstand push-ups were still fire and they were ready to go, but my sandbag cleans were definitely not. So I wish I had 1 more minute on that one.
Yeah. It was unfortunate. It was one of the few like gymnastics focused workouts, and we didn't get an opportunity to really see the gymnast show off on that bit. And so I would have loved to see that more.
Yeah.
I think my big takeaway from the weekend, aside from the stuff we talked about with like rate of force development for the older age groups, is how impactful range of motion is at those age groups. And I don't just mean like mobility, like stretching. I mean like your ability to move through a full range of motion under load takes you so far, because you just see people struggling to get full range to even get a quality rep. And the ones that are, maybe they start to have a little hitch in a position, or it's not comfortable or something. And I think intensity totally out of the picture, volume out of the picture. Person A that has demand of a larger range of motion is more successful than person B as you get from like 45 and older, which are truly like the masters groups, right? Like we're seeing this 35 to 39, even the 40 to 45. It's really just like an extension of the elite group. But the true like masters changes, I think, happen more at that 45 group. Like, God, range of motion plays such a big role. Just the way they squat, the way they're able to do something like a wall walk, the way you're able to move through lunges and stuff. Like the screw transition times, just like rep time that it takes to do these things, you know?
Yeah. Cool. Judging, how was it?
So, well, you know, hey,
I mean,
they're
I had a
volunteers.
great judge on my wall walk deadlift workout. He was
It
like,
happens.
let's do this. I'm like, you're right. Let's go. I'm like, are you supposed to be cheering for me? I'll take it right now. I think I only had one that was like on double
I know,
unders. Like,
right.
again, this was for a lot of people talking about it, where I was just like, all right, my brain's on 40, you're on 30. We're just going to keep going until we get to 54, and that's fine. I'm just here. It's fine. But it's kind of just like, again, you can't get mad about it. You got to just roll with it, and you got to make the most out of it. But that's one of those movements that gets most people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought, for the most part, that was good. Like we said, the schedule went well. It was a fun event, right? Like, and they packed the house well. I know
cool.
there was a lot of people competing, brought their family, but that was enough to really like fill the place and make it feel like a pretty exciting competition, especially on the main floor. So all in all, it was a good experience. I would definitely encourage people to get involved with it. I don't entirely know how the qualification process goes. I think that there's some ways you can qualify through other local competitions. There's an online qualifier in addition, but like, gosh, if you're a Masters athlete that wants to get into more competing, between this and Masters Fitness Collective, I think there's two like absolute slam dunk competitions to get your feet wet with.
Very cool. Before we sign off, also just want to recognize that we had some athletes that competed in the New Zealand Nationals. We had one of our athletes, Marnie Sykes, who won. She's the New Zealand national champion, which is really cool. And
Marnie didn't just win; she freaking dominated.
She did. Yeah, she dominated.
Would she have 4 event wins? She won 2 of the first 3 events. She took second in the other one.
Yeah,
she was exciting all weekend. That was awesome.
And then we had another 3 guys that all finished in the top 10. Mm-hmm. And Bailey Martin, who finished second, and if he could swim, he would have won. I sent him a message, and I was like, can you get Marnie to teach you how to swim, bro? He was like, oh, no. Oh, my God. He was like, it was terrible. But, yeah. So he said he's going to look into getting a local swim coach and start putting a little more of a emphasis on his swimming, because he would have kind of run away with it a little bit if he knew how to swim.
It's so funny. He's one of the most talented freaking athletes I've ever seen. And I look at some of his stuff, and he just has these 2 little tiny holes that are actually really freaking big holes. But we won't expose him for it on there. But like, if he can shore those things up, he's going to be a dangerous athlete this season.
He's really good. He's a guy that people will be talking about in Oceania region. Was he 5th or 6th last year at Torian? But I think he's got a great chance to make the games this year. And then obviously Dan Falmuina and Luke Fowler did extremely well also. So, solid weekend for our Kiwis, and we just wanted to recognize them. Anything else, guys, before we say goodnight?
Colette, what's your one big takeaway for Masters athletes that want to get into competing or going into their next competition or looking to sign up for our programming going forward?
Honestly, Masters programming is like the best way you can be most efficient with your time. This is why I started doing underdogs when I did, was because I had 90 minutes and I had to get as much in without messing around and looking at a gazillion different things. So it's a one-stop shop for everything that you guys want to do with your fitness goals. Easy. I'll plug all day.
And for those that don't know, Colette heads our master's program, and basically what we do is we pick, 3 to 4 essential pieces for the day with a couple additional pieces based on time you have available or weaknesses that you're trying to work on. So take some of that guesswork out of trying to do an elite program that has 3 or 4 hours worth of programming. It's like, no, this is what you need, and here's what you can do if you have time for it. So it's kind of your dinner and your dessert options. Dakota, what's your big takeaway?
Yeah, no, I definitely second on the focus on condensing some of the programming. That's one of the things I like about the RX, but really what I've got to like about looking at some of the Masters stuff, I haven't really looked at it a whole lot lately, but when I first was taking on Shannon and switching over with Debbie, I like just focuses here and there. But for getting into like the Legends circuit, like you're saying, there's the online qualifiers, there's regional events, and if you happen to already go to Wadapalooza or the games, they're doing invites there too.
Very cool. I love it.
Lots of opportunities.
Lots.
Wadapalooza coming up.
Couple
Yeah, we'll see
weeks.
if,
Colette's got to run it back.
Yeah, Kiefer's loving
Ooh,
this.
Colette,
right now.
defending
It's fine.
champion.
That's right.
I'm starting. I'm swimming.
how's your
tomorrow.
swimming, Colette?
I'm back.
Do we
There you
know who's
yeah.
in the field with you?
Yeah, Allison Stahl will be there, who came in third and was
stud.
in second or first for a good chunk of the weekend.
No, I don't think any
Amy-
of the other girls.
is Amy Morton
I don't
competing as
recognize
well?
any of the names. It's a lot of girls from last year that I competed against, but then Allison as well too. So that'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
It'll
that'll
be
a
different. It'll be
one,
very
but that'll be
different.
cool because it balances
Yeah.
it all out.
Field's
Yeah.
I
going to
was
be in
ready
trouble.
for that 150
She didn't get half of
sandbag.
her strength in the weekend this
But
past
just for a
weekend.
walk, not a clean, just a walk.
Cool.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. This was fun. Always good to get to chat with some people when they actually, they're living through the competitions and stuff. So,
Thanks for letting me live vicariously for the weekend, guys. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
when are we going to get you on the Masters circuit?
Yeah, no, that's not. Maybe the Masters rock climbing circuit. That's about it.
There you go. Cool. Until next time, my friends, I think this is where we're supposed to put that little plug where it's like, if you like this episode, please subscribe,
pretty good.
like,
That
share with a
sounds
friend,
sweet.
and leave a comment.
Yeah, that was good. Your
All those things. That was really good. I like the
softer
voice, too.
side.
Thanks.
You should just
Yeah,
record it and just run that every time. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Stroke, take that shit and clip it in there, dude.
Yep.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.